Hello friends, thanks for watching here at Ops Lounge. I'm Andy Parsons, New Stack Solutions Architect for Pure Storage here at APJ. Today we're going to demonstrate failover to a third site in VMware using FlashArray's async technology. Now, recently I've been asked to upgrade some of the lab architecture to support some of the newer features offered by VMware. And in the midst of those upgrades, a hot topic that's come up several times from customers is using async to recover a VM to a DR site or third site. Now, VMware has a great piece of software called SRM that makes this a breeze. But some of our customers are looking to how they can do this without having to invest in any more software licensing. It could be organizations that have their own DevOps team or their own DevOps process and prefer to build tooling in-house rather than purchasing over-the-shelf software, or maybe they just don't have the budget at that time to purchase any additional licensing. So let's look at how we can use or how we can recover a virtual machine effortlessly in the event of a site failure. So we'll take a look into this scenario where we have an application that's set up in an active cluster pair that's protected across two arrays, which is providing failover protection. And we'll then add that to a third array in case of a disaster strikes. Could be from a fire that takes out power to the building or a network connection to the building. Could be a hurricane that's flooded the region, and maybe we need to recover to a third geo. So looking at this environment, the first thing we need to do is set up our async replication, which we'll do by connecting these two arrays. And once we've done that, we can go ahead and create a protection group. And in that protection group, we can enable replication, we can enable snapshots, and we can add that volume and then the target of that third array. Now once we've done that and we've actually moved the data, we can then restore that virtual machine from a snapshot into a new volume and mount that into our cluster, which we can then add into our vCenter. In this case, it's a management cluster. So let's take a look at how we might do this in Pure today. Here you can see our volume. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a protection group. We'll call that third site. We can go into that protection group. We can add a target. In this case, we're going to add red dot. We can then enable snapshots. And we can enable replication. And we'll set that to 1 hour. Now, before I add this member, let's go into the virtual machine and make some changes to it so we can see those changes replicated across. So what we'll do is just open up a file on the desktop. We'll call it third site replication. We'll save that file. We'll call it third site. So now we've got a file on the desktop called third site. And now let's add that volume. And then we can replicate now. We'll call it replicate now, and it's going to add that suffix to it. All right, so you can already see it started replication and it's also added my replicate now. So we can go over to that array, red dot, and if we do a refresh and look at protection groups, we should see that a protection group called third site has been created. And if we look at snapshots, we can see that we have a third site snapshot and then the first snapshot that was moved over. We can then copy that snapshot into a new snapshot, which we can then use, or into a new volume, which we can then use to mount into our vCenter. So we'll call it new snapshot third site. We'll go ahead and overwrite because we're creating a new volume. And yes, we want to overwrite. And we've now created that volume. So now if we go to volumes and we go third site. We should see that new volume. Now let's connect it to somebody. Let's go to host groups. We've got one called Singapore cluster. That's our management cluster. We'll go ahead and connect that. Now let's identify that this is a 1 terabyte volume with a LUN ID of 241, and we've connected to these two hosts, which is our management cluster. So let's go into our management cluster, and let's do a scan to pick up that new volume. You can see I've got two hosts in here. So it'll only take a second. What we'll do is pause that video. Right, so now the rescan is complete. Let's go ahead and add that new volume that we created from Snapshot. So we're going to go New Data Store. We're just going to create a VMFS volume, and we're just going to call this the Restore. We'll select Host Manage 1. Now, remember I said that LUN ID is 241, which is 1 terabyte. I think there's some metadata. It might have actually been created from an old snapshot, this volume called Z-VD bench. So we're going to use LUN ID 241. It's actually going to append that to the snapshot. So let's go ahead and click Next. Oh, let's select it and click Next. And we're going to give it a new signature. We'll go ahead and click Next. Leave VMF6 as a default, and we'll hit Finish. Now we should see here a snapshot, and it should append the name to it. Right, so Z-VD bench, we can go in here and we can see there's no VMs, but if we go and browse files, we should see there's our AC workload 02. We can then add that virtual machine back into vCenter. Now we're going to call this something else. We'll just call this Restored Virtual Machine. We'll put it in the Retire folder since I'm going to retire it after this is over. And we'll hit Finish. And if we go into that retired folder, we should see a virtual machine called Restored VM. All right, so now that we've restored this virtual machine, before we turn it on, let's go ahead and disable networking, because we've got a duplicate. We've duplicated it and it's still in the lab environment. So we're going to restore that virtual machine. Now that we've disabled networking, let's go ahead and power it on. Go ahead and log in, and we should see that file that we created on the desktop on the other machine. Third site, and there you have it. And that's how you perform the third site disaster recovery in VMware using Pure's FlashArray ActiveSync. If you liked watching this video, there's many more to come. Go ahead and click that subscribe button now, and you can be notified of more great videos here from Pure Storage from Ops Lounge here in APJ. Thanks for watching.